So I want to follow up for a second on the Macbeth theory that we talked about last week. I was talking about this idea of a floating Banquo, where we've got Viserys as Macbeth trying to interpret these prophecies, and then there's that second character, that lieutenant to Macbeth, who gets his own prophecy about bearing future kings, and that difference between their prophecies, one of them will be king, one of them will have future kings, that tears them apart ultimately. And I was saying that Banquo, in this story, is sort of a floating identity that can land on whoever Viserys is most suspicious of trying to take his throne from him. We decided last week that Otto was sort of the best character to embody Banquo at this point. But Otto's gone now. He's dispatched in this episode.
I wonder where he went.
An actual ghost?
Well, yeah, I mean, if we're following the chronology of the play, Macbeth has a bunch of nobles gathered, and he's giving a speech during a dinner, and he keeps getting interrupted by Banquo's ghost. And he's just had Banquo killed and killed his sons. And the ghost keeps entering and sitting at all the unoccupied chairs around a table. And I wrote this in my notes. Well, looky here. Old Cam isn't a raving lunatic after all.
That is an incredible thing to point out.
That's fun.
We've got 2 Banquo ghost entrances in this episode. Both enter during a feast, interrupt Viserys, and sit at a very important empty seat at the table. Daemon and Alicent, both possible betrayers with claims to that Banquo prophecy. Daemon, because if he seduces Rhaenyra and possibly has kids with her, that undermines and threatens the succession line. And Alicent, because she literally gave birth to Aegon, the direct challenge to Viserys' chosen successor. But in the play, Macbeth only survives this ghost freakout scene because Lady Macbeth covers for him and saves him from the embarrassment. The twist, the remix in this show is that Lady Macbeth is part of the problem.
Yes, she is Banquo.
So it all just gets worse, and this episode ends with a Macbeth collapse. We see Viserys hit the floor for the second time in this episode.
Poor guy.
And if we're tracking that Macbeth comparison through to the end of the story, it's an open war for succession that ends in him getting beheaded. And I think by the end of this episode, when Alicent enters in that green dress and she draws the battle lines for the schism in the Targaryen family, she has started that war. And I don't know if that Viserys collapse is fatal, but as a parallel to Macbeth, closing out this 5th episode with basically the overtures of Act 5 of Macbeth wraps it up neatly in a nice little bow.
That's a really great
That's
observation.
Awesome.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like that was the inspiration for real. I mean, I think that's the nail on the head. That's too similar to not have been intentional.